Before wars begin, before treaties are signed, before headlines break, power shifts quietly, not in front of cameras, but behind closed doors, through access, through leverage, through decisions most people never see. And right now, a quiet shift may already be underway in the Horn of Africa. Look at the map. The Red Sea, Bab el-Mandeb, Berbera, Addis Ababa. At first glance they seem disconnected, but strategically they form one corridor, one of the most critical trade and security routes on Earth. So here's the question. Why is Israel deepening its ties with Ethiopia now? Why are Somaliland's ports drawing new diplomatic attention? And could a single act of recognition, not conflict, not confrontation, but recognition alone, reshape influence across the entire region overnight? Because modern geopolitics doesn't move loudly. It positions, it aligns, it prepares. By the time the world notices, the balance of power has already changed. Most people see events after they happen. Here, we analyze them before. Stay with me. This isn't speculation, this is strategy. Welcome to Horn Lens, where we examine power as it actually operates. Analysis, not opinion. Signal, not noise. And in today's briefing, we break down Israel's Ethiopia strategy and why Addis Ababa may quietly hold the key to Somaliland's recognition and the next geopolitical realignment in the Horn of Africa. Somaliland's modern story began with 5 days of independence in 1960 before uniting with Somalia in pursuit of a pan-Somali dream. That union quickly soured, especially under Siad Barre's brutal dictatorship, culminating in mass atrocities against Somaliland's people. When Barre's regime collapsed in 1991, Somaliland declared its independence, charting a separate path through grassroots peace conferences and hybrid governance. In 2001, a national referendum overwhelmingly approved a new constitution, cementing Somaliland's claim to statehood. Since then, it has held multiple democratic elections and maintained stability in a volatile region. Somaliland has all the hallmarks of a functioning state: defined territory, effective government, and control over its borders. It issues its own passports and currency, and maintains informal diplomatic ties worldwide. Yet despite its successes, Somaliland remains unrecognized, a state in all but name, still waiting for the world's formal acknowledgement. Its 3-decade quest for recognition continues. Somaliland's biggest obstacle isn't governance, it's Africa's fear of unraveling colonial borders. The 1964 Cairo Declaration enshrined respect for inherited boundaries to prevent endless conflict, making recognition of breakaway states taboo. Many African leaders worry that recognizing Somaliland would embolden other secessionist movements, threatening the continent's fragile stability. Somaliland argues its case is unique. It's not secession, but a dissolution of a voluntary union between two independent states. Even an AU fact-finding mission in 2005 acknowledged Somaliland's special circumstances, but political inertia prevails. The international community defers to the African Union, creating a diplomatic deadlock. Africa waits for consensus, while the world waits for Africa. Somaliland remains trapped in this limbo. Ethiopia, Africa's most populous landlocked nation, relies almost entirely on Djibouti's port, a strategic vulnerability. In January 2024, Ethiopia and Somaliland signed a deal. Somaliland would lease a stretch of coastline for an Ethiopian naval base and port in exchange for recognition and a stake in Ethiopian Airlines. The agreement was historic for Somaliland, but risky for Ethiopia, which faces internal secessionist pressures and potential backlash from the African Union and key allies. For nearly 2 years, Ethiopia hesitated, weighing the benefits of sea access against the risks of diplomatic isolation. Israel's sudden recognition of Somaliland in December 2025 upended this careful balance. Now, Ethiopia must decide, act, and secure its maritime future, or risk losing out as the diplomatic landscape shifts. The stakes are high. not just for Ethiopia, but for the entire region. The clock is ticking on Ethiopia's strategic gamble. Somaliland's fate hangs in the balance. Israel's recognition of Somaliland was a calculated move, not a diplomatic accident. Somaliland's location on the Gulf of Aden offers Israel a strategic foothold near the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, vital for global trade and security. With Houthi threats in Yemen and rival powers like Iran and Turkey expanding influence, Israel saw an opportunity to secure its interests and expand the Abraham Accords. In January 2026, Israel formalized ties, promising cooperation in technology and development, sparking celebrations in Somaliland. For Ethiopia, Israel's move was a game-changer, forcing Addis Ababa to reconsider its own strategy. Ethiopia lost its leverage as the potential first recognizer and now faces a stark choice. Follow Israel's lead or risk being sidelined. The diplomatic initiative has shifted, and the region is watching Ethiopia's next move. Somaliland's breakthrough has changed the rules of the game. Israel's recognition of Somaliland sent shockwaves through the international community. Somalia condemned the move as a violation of its sovereignty, quickly cutting ties with the UAE, which it saw as complicit. A coalition of Muslim, Arab, and African states rejected the recognition, with major powers like Turkey, Egypt, China, and Russia reaffirming support for a unified Somalia. For Egypt, anything benefiting Ethiopia is suspect. For Turkey and China, their investments in Mogadishu are at stake. Western powers took a cautious approach. The US defended Israel's right to recognize states but maintained its one Somalia policy, while the UK and EU voiced concern but stopped short of outright condemnation. Notably, Abraham Accords signatories like the UAE stayed silent, hinting at quiet support for Somaliland's stability. Some African nations, including South Sudan and Guinea, are reportedly watching closely, considering their own moves. The fractured response has created a new diplomatic reality, one where old certainties are fading. Somaliland's recognition is now a live issue on the world stage. The path forward is uncertain, but the status quo has been shattered. Somaliland's status is a legal and political battleground. Opponents cite territorial integrity, arguing Somaliland remains part of Somalia and that recognition would set a dangerous precedent. Somaliland's advocates counter that it meets all criteria for statehood under the Montevideo Convention: population, territory, government, and capacity for relations. They argue this is not secession, but remedial withdrawal from a failed union, especially after mass atrocities under Siad Barre. International law is ambiguous. Recognition is ultimately a political act, not a legal one. Israel's move breaks the taboo, forcing the issue from theory into practice. The debate is no longer abstract. It's now about real-world diplomacy and shifting alliances. Somaliland's case is testing the boundaries of international order. Israel's recognition has put Ethiopia at a crossroads with continental implications. If Ethiopia recognizes Somaliland, it secures sea access and boosts Somaliland's legitimacy, potentially inspiring other African nations to follow. Such a move would challenge the African Union's core principles and could reshape the continent's approach to self-determination. If Ethiopia hesitates, it risks losing its strategic advantage and remaining dependent on Djibouti. Somaliland, now backed by Israel, may seek new partners and tougher terms. The diplomatic map of Africa is being redrawn in real time. Ethiopia's decision will define the region's future and the fate of Somaliland's quest for recognition. The story is far from over, but the old order is already changing.